All right, so this afternoon we will be talking about our accelerated training for Illinois manufacturing, and we're going to be identifying suitable ATIM participants. We have with us today our special guests, Mike Baker from DCEO, and Jim Potts, who is in charge of some reporting for WIA eligibility, also for the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And as always, we have myself, Dee Reinhardt, Natasha Telger, Chelsea Jones, and Lacey Pollack that are making these webinars work so wonderfully smoothly. So we have, if you have not had the opportunity to download any of the files that are in the file share pod, at the bottom of the screen, please do that. You just click on the file, download it, and then you can save it to your computer. And if you need to ask a question, please do so in the chat. And we will get rolling on our presentation here. Okay. Our topics today are going to be outreach, eligibility requirements, competencies, guidance for determining suitability for manufacturing, and assigning to a treatment control group, and then referrals. So let's get moving on our presentation today with looking at our big picture. Right now, we talked a little bit about manufacturing in some of our previous webinars, but what we're going to be talking today a lot is outreach and how we can make sure that we're getting the right applicants for our study, for our ATIM study. So today with the outreach, we'd like to take a look at what is already available out there for you. Right now we have a number of tools that are available. We have our website, and where you can direct people to the website where we have information for both potential participants and potential employers. And we have information where they can learn more about the accelerated program, on how people may qualify for the program, news and updates, frequently asked questions, and last but not least, they can actually get to the application. Also, if you need to access any of this information, all you have to do is go to the ATIM guide and click on the Get Started, and you can see all of the resources that we have compiled for you there. And there's live links to presentations, to documents, to the different things that you might need to make sure that you're reaching out properly to your prospects. Also on our outreach, we have flyers for individuals, and we have an option to download it in Word so that you can add your own information. There are a couple of our programs, a couple of our regions whose program is not including the logistics component of this study. So what you can do is you can edit those documents in Word to put your region's information in there, as well as take out that actual component. The images will stay the same, though. And then we also have talking points for media releases, radio or TV, and then you can add them into newsletters and on social media. Then if you have anything that you need to do, then potentially a television station or a radio station in the local area might be able to do a talk with you on the radio so that you can reach out to more clients, potential clients that way as well. And additionally, we have materials designed specifically for employers. On our webinar on Tuesday the 10th, we'll be addressing more about working with employers as well. I just wanted to point these items out to you. So now, eligibility. I've got a poll question for you that I would like to open up. So if you take a moment and let us know which items are WIA eligible items. And while you're answering those items or picking your choices in there, what we would like to talk to you, just to refresh your memory about this, is that when on the application, when somebody has completed it, it indicates to the applicant that they will be contacted by a representative from your region in 5 business days. So what we need to know is, do you have a plan within your region to make sure that those people are going to be contacted? And in process right now is an option in the ATIM Tools area that it will have a flag next to the person's name so that you can click that flag so that it will indicate whether or not the person has been contacted or not, so that you're not duplicating your efforts within your region. So it looks like we've got some pretty good responses here on our poll item. We're going to give you just a couple of more seconds to complete the poll, and then we're going to move forward. It looks like pretty much most of the people have answered, so I'm going to close this poll now, and we're going to move on in the presentation. So in the flow process of the big picture of the process, we have where we're at with determining applicant eligibility, and we're going to be determining suitability. So with the applicant eligibility, it includes WIA eligible, passing the test of adult basic education, and then determining suitability, partners together, and selecting suitable potential participants. So first and foremost, let's take a moment and talk a little bit about eligibility. So first and foremost, the participants in ATIM must be WIA eligible. And you can access a guide for income eligibility on the website. And what we want to stress to everyone is that we want to make sure that only the people that are the most experienced in WIA eligibility should be handling this task. We don't want people that don't quite know what they're doing with WIA eligibility to be making those determinations. So now let's take one more poll question real quickly here. Do participants have to pass a drug test? All right, we have 50 people on the call, and we've gotten 32 answers. So let's everybody answer your poll question for me. We're going to close it here in about 3 seconds. All right, thank you for your answers. So Jim, are there any items on here that you would like to address about eligibility for WIA or dislocated workers?
Yeah, I'll just speak a little bit. They have to be 1A low income. So if they meet any of the public assistance, if they're on part of a food stamp household, if they're on a form of cash welfare, if they're homeless, if they meet the low income family income calculation, or if they meet the family of one due to disability criteria for low income. So any of those would make the person eligible. If they're not 1A low income, then they must meet any of the 4 dislocated worker criteria, being plant closure, substantial layoff, unlikely to return to previous investor occupation, a displaced homemaker, or previously self-employed, now unemployed. So they have to meet either 1A adult low income or one of the forms of a dislocated worker.
Great. Great. Let's have a an answer to a question from the audience. Pam Fettis wants to know which panel is required. And Pam, can you tell me what you mean by panel?
I think she's speaking about on a drug test or certain panels. Not that I've ever
Okay.
done one, but I believe that's what they're just guessing.
Okay. All right, we'll get her to clarify that in the chat pod for us, and then we'll answer moving on from there. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say, Jim, about eligibility here?
Nope, just those things. They just have to meet the ones that are listed, 18 years old, authorized or older, or authorized to work, and if a male, must be compliant with selective service, and then meet either the WE adult low income or dislocated worker.
All right, great.
And that also, I believe everybody knows, but they cannot already be a WEA registrant, or if they are an exiter, they've had to have been exited over 90 days. That's both for WEA and TAA.
Okay, that's a good point to know, that they have to have been exited for over 90 days.
Or they cannot be a current WEA registrant.
Great. Thank you for making that clarification for us. All right, let's move on with a couple more points about eligibility. They need to be willing to submit to a background check, and they need to be able to have some specific TABE testing requirements. And then last but not least, they need to be able to pass a drug test, and we will answer Pam's question here. So once all the testing is done and the person is determined eligible, they will be required to take a once they're determined to be suitable, they will be required to take a drug test. And on the application checklist, on the first page of the application, there is a statement about drug testing and background checks. Once the application has been submitted, there will be an automatic email notice sent out to the applicant indicating that a person from the regional group will be contacting the applicant within 5 business days. So here we want to reiterate that your region needs to establish a process to determine how that applicant has been contacted. And the system will have a flag by the person's name so that you can click to indicate that the call has been made. So Mike, would you like to address a little bit more about the TABE testing elements?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dee. The TABE test is a good indicator of potential success in the program. And what we want to make sure is that people can read and write at the level necessary to eventually be employed in manufacturing. So typically the cutoff that manufacturers are willing to look at is 9th grade math, 10th grade reading. So as you all have been on this information before, and we've heard, we have bridge programs set up and contextualized manufacturing learning set up to help people boost their reading and math skills so that they will be employable at the end of the program. So just as you are considering applicants for suitability for the program, you have to ask yourself, what level are they at, and can they reasonably be expected to get up to that 9th, 10th grade level quickly? And that it's going to be vary from individual to individual, very much a personalized assessment on each person. But just keep in mind that regardless of what training programs that may be out there that allow people to enter with 8th grade reading and math levels, the bottom line is employers need people at 9th and 10th. So by the end of training, that's where people need to be. So you have to ask yourself, can an applicant realistically jump from where they're at to get to that level in the time frame that we have available?
Great. And then is there a specific TABE test that they're going to be doing? Is it going to be applied math, math computation, or both?
Actually, Levon can speak to that. It's a standard TABE test for reading and math that is available. And then also, if they are English as a second language, there are 3 tests that can be used for that. One is BEST, BEST Plus, and there's the third one escapes me. But we could make that available to everyone. I think that was made available already in information provided prior, but we can look those up and make sure everyone knows what those are.
All right. Do you, Levon, are you available? Can you?
I'm here,
Okay.
but I'm not sure, I'll be quite honest, that I can confirm whether it's applied or computation. I think that the one that is used most primarily in adult ed is math computation. But while we're on the call, on the webinar, I will double check, and then I'll just put an answer in the box.
Great.
In the chat.
And what we will do, Levon, as well, for everybody else's information, all of the questions that are asked here are added to the FAQ section in the ATIM guide so that we can get the proper answers out on the website.
Okay,
So,
and I see there are some answers coming up around TABE from some people that are obviously out in the field working with it. Okay.
Okay. So it says TABE applied math on the complete battery allows a calculator to be used.
Right. And it says
And
we
our
must
scoring
both
key.
do, Rebecca Marshall says, math computation and math application.
Okay, great.
So,
and then we do have one more question from Jamie Brown that says, is everyone doing the TABE locator? And at what level?
I'm not familiar with what the TABE locator is, so I cannot speak to that.
How about Jamie, if we get an answer for that for you, and we'll add that to the FAQ. Okay.
Just a quick response to David's point that some employers don't allow applicants to use a calculator on pre-employment testing. That's fine for what they are doing, but for what we are doing is a standard TABE test, which the standard protocols for that testing should be used. This is just to determine suitability for the program. If an employer wants to put a more stringent test on someone as they come in, that's their right to do that. But we don't need to follow every employer's rules because those are going to vary from company to company. For what we're doing right now, we just have to worry about how we ordinarily administer the TABE test.
Great. And then back to the drug panel test, there is not a specific drug test area that must be used. Just to follow up on that question. So
just let me speak to that a little bit, Dee. Basically, it just has to be one that is respected by employers in your region. So I don't know any that wouldn't be, but just make sure that whatever test you end up using is economical, but also passes muster with the majority of employers in your region. I would not worry about stepping up to a higher grade test for every single individual. If you got one or two employers out of dozens that say they need that, you can work that out with those and test just a handful of people if necessary, or they can pay for a higher level test if necessary. But we can't let one employer drive costs up for everything if a lower test is manageable and doable for the majority of employers in your region. So keep that in mind.
Great, great. Thank you very much. Let's take a step forward and talk about competencies. And in the big picture, we're looking at these 4 areas, the groups of occupations within these 4 areas, which is machine operators, mechatronics, welding, and logistics and inventory. And based on each of these, there are specific qualifications and competencies that are required by the areas. And so virtually all manufacturing occupations fall into one of these 4 buckets. And based on the competencies, there should be a general acceptance of the ATIM competencies by college training providers because we're using the objectives that they had developed. And what we will be doing is we will be adding the crosswalk into the ATIM guide as well as in our downloadable documents. So, Mike, do you want to address the point in this slide?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dee. What we're working on, and we hope to have it available now already, but we've had a sudden illness crop up on a key staff person, so this is something that's still under development. But what we're getting to is a guide that will have a crosswalk of what competencies go to which occupations, so that regardless of where people are coming from, whether it's on the employer side or the training provider side or the participant side or the case manager side, everybody will understand which occupations go into which bucket and which set of competencies should be applied to those occupations. So that way, a machinist at one company may not be a machinist somewhere else. I mean, they all have their own little internal titles for some of these occupations. So what we're trying to get to is something that's standardized so that when you say machine operator 3, that's going to mean the same thing to everybody, and everybody understands what competencies are necessary for that occupation. And so you can create a training plan that helps that person meet those competencies by the time they're done with training. So we're trying to get basically a Rosetta Stone so that everybody understands which competencies go with which occupation.
Great, great. Thank you for that. Let's take a look at the next slide, which is talking about competencies for a machine operator. These are specific duties that a machine operator needs to be able to do. And as a case manager in a workforce development agency, you may not know exactly what a machine operator is required to do. And there's varying levels of CNC or computer numerical control levels that people might know. So what we're going to be doing, or what we have available for you, are some screening questions to help you determine that an applicant knows what they say they know if they say that they have some machine operator experience. So another area included in machine operator might be a manufacturer's service rep. And that's the kind of person that goes into a plant and performs the installation. So there's different levels of people that need to know different levels of machining. So it makes it a little bit more of a challenge to determine whether or not somebody has the skills that they say they have or that they need to have to be able to do this job and or this study training. Now, welding has a whole lot of opportunities as well, and the alphabet soup at the bottom of the page stands for gas metal arc welding, which is also known as MIG welding, which is metal inert gas, or MAG welding, which is metal active gas. And then we have FCAW, which is flux cord arc welding, GTAW, which is gas tungsten arc welding, which is also known as TIG welding, or tungsten inert gas. SMA is shielded metal arc welding, or it also stands for shoulder-launched multi-purpose assault weapons, but I don't think we're going to be dealing with those. And then SAW is submerged arc welding. So just by looking at that alphabet soup there, we need to understand that we need some help making sure that these people know or will know what they want to do. And here's a list of the competencies that they will learn during the training if they are accepted into the program. Then we have mechatronics. And for our purposes, mechatronics generally equals machine maintenance. They're able to go in and troubleshoot and solve problems for all of the different sensors and control systems and the electronics and the hydraulics, all the different parts. And again, we have screening questions specifically geared at finding out whether or not someone has the competencies on this screen if they say they have those skills in their set. And then we move on to logistics and inventory. And again, not every area has this set of training in their region, but these are the things that people would need to know how to do. And then this list gives them the competencies that they will learn inside of the accelerated training program. All right, let's take another poll question here. Which filters, when you're trying to determine suitability from the applications, would help you make the best decision? Look at that. All right, somebody needs to mute their phone while they're typing. All right, we have, let's just move this one over, and while you're finishing up that one, let's answer here. Who will make the determination on suitability? All right, the first question is multiple answer. The second question is multiple choice. All right, we're going to give you just one more second here to finish up the second question. I'm going to close the first one down. And we're going to be closing down the second question. So what makes someone more suitable than someone else? And Mike, what's your opinion about who will make the most suitable candidates?
Well, again, suitability will vary from individual to individual, and it will be a combination of subjective analysis and objective analysis. But generally, on the slide you see in front of you, the candidate needs to have all of those in place or they're not suitable. The question is, what makes someone more suitable? Well, if they don't have all of these, they're not suitable at all. I mean, they have to have an interest and be motivated to participate and finish out training. They have to be okay with the random assignment piece of the program. Certainly they have to be adult or dislocated worker eligible. That is a must-have. And as we spoke to earlier, they have to have reading and math scores that are within quick striking distance of getting to the target required by employers. They also have to pass the drug test and be willing to undergo the background check. Any one of these things is not present, you do not have a suitable candidate.
Can a region establish some basic criteria to follow per each category? So like with machinists, can they establish, hey, these are the criteria that we really want to see?
They could. They would, just as long as that's based on employer expectations, which could vary from region to region, but because those can vary so much from employer to employer, as long as you are setting yourself up to make viable placements, it's certainly okay to do that. But just be careful that you don't set your bar in such a way as to eliminate good placements from either the employment side or the candidate side. But certainly all of the factors that are on the slide in front of us right now, those have to be in place regardless of the occupation.
Let's answer a question that we had from the audience while we're looking at this, the willingness to undergo a background check. Suppose someone comes up with a conviction. Do we have a list of convictions, misdemeanors, or felonies that would either exclude somebody from the potential pool or allow them to be included?
We do not, because again, that is going to vary from employer to employer. What we are told by our friends that are experts in dealing with the employers and from the ones we have dealt with personally in our work here, is that having a conviction itself is not necessarily a showstopper. as long as the person is upfront about it, because what will happen is the background check really checks their character. So if someone has committed a crime, paid their debts to society, served their sentence, and is now back in the workforce or trying to get in the workforce, many companies will hire an ex-offender as long as they understand what it is that they're getting. So if someone on their application says, I'm an ex-offender, and lays it out, and the background check says, yeah, that's what they have, they know, okay, this person was shooting straight with us on their application. Where they have a problem is the applicant tries to hide that, and then the background check turns up something that they did not disclose in the application. Then they know that there's a character problem, or at least the person has shown a willingness to falsify a document, so that's probably a barrier to employment at that point. But just having a conviction on your record does not necessarily exclude you from ever being employed again.
And does willingness to do a background check mean that they're required to do a background check?
No, the background check is not required. Many companies ask for it, many don't. Sometimes companies, if they do require the background check, one of the things we talked about early on in this program model was you could negotiate with a company to have them pay for that as a leveraged resource for the program. The logic being that we're going to pay for everybody to be drug tested when they come in. But because different employers have different levels of comfort on various convictions, that really it's on the employer to determine if they want that background check or not. So it's okay to do them, certainly, but it's something that the employer, in my opinion, ought to pay for. That doesn't mean the ATIM program can't pay for it, but it's much easier for the employer to absorb the cost of one or two background checks versus the ATIM program paying for all of them, because we do that for everybody, times 600 people at least statewide. That's a huge chunk of money, a decent chunk of money anyway.
Right.
But back to the list issue. Again, there's not a list because that's going to vary from employer to employer. So you just have to make sure that people are willing to submit to the background check, and they know that that'll be out there. So if they've got something in their background, if they don't have it on their application, that's going to come back to bite them later.
Right. Let's move on to the next slide. What are the should-haves that somebody needs to consider?
Well, again, you need to look at what do they bring to the table, and what does that contribute to their ability to succeed in the program. So do they have some sort of background in manufacturing, either work experience or training? And do they have good, or at least workably good, soft skills? Can they show up to work on time? Do they get along well with employers? Do they have a history of bouncing from job to job because of issues with coworkers or employers? This is something that comes out both in the application process and the information they provide to you, but also when you're talking to them. So this is the part that has some subjectivity into it, but also there's the objective pieces as well, where you can look at their background and see what they bring to the table. This is also, and we're going to have a specific webinar on this in the future, on the torque analyses, to look at what skills they may have in their background might be transferable to manufacturing that wouldn't be readily apparent if you didn't understand the torque analysis and have the background in that. The classic example we've been using in talking about this is bank teller. On the surface, that has absolutely zero to do with manufacturing. However, there are some pretty intensive math skills that are at play when you're a bank teller that are very applicable to manufacturing. So again, that's something that you've just got to look at the background and see, and do they have something that would help them succeed when they enter our program.
Great, great. So after considering the totality of all the factors we just covered, Mike, what would you say that it all boils down to?
This question right in front of us. You have to ask yourself, looking at this candidate, does this person have what it takes to successfully complete training and get permanent employment in the time frame that we have available to us? And the key part of that is in the time frame that we have available to us, in the time allowed. Because if you flood your region with people that have a huge math and reading gap, say that they're at the 6th or low 7th grade level, they're going to spend all their time in a bridge program trying to get up to speed to get to 9th and 10th level before they can even enter advanced skill training. Those folks probably do not have enough time to be successful in our program. So that's why, even though the bare minimum level for even being considered is 6th grade, remember you need to aim higher. For those of you who haven't heard that yet in the last couple of weeks, you do need to aim higher on your suitability assessment when they're coming in. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of people in your program, but no one in actual real skill training. They're all going to be in the traditional bridge piece for a long time.
And that doesn't help with the time allowed factor.
Right.
So who will be the best applicants? One of the things that happens is suitability is half measurement and half subjective discretion. My family has a carpentry business, and when people call up asking about carpenter positions, I screen them by asking what a king stud is. And if they can answer that question properly, I continue with the conversation. If they don't, I end the conversation relatively quickly. So this is a good example if somebody claims to have a carpentry background. But all of the screening questions for the groups in our study will help you determine if the knowledge the applicant says they possess is actually valid. And if the applicant admits to not having a manufacturing background but has a decent torque skill or the transferability of skills based on work history, they would still be a very viable candidate for manufacturing occupations, like Mike just said. And we will be discussing the torque analysis on the 11th, at the webinar on the 11th. So now we have staff from the Illinois Network for Advanced Manufacturing suggested the following as a scenario. What you want to do is you want to identify the cream of the crop for the suitability testing groups. You need to establish a few filters based on items that are selected, not just text fields, from the application. For example, the regional team would like to set up suitability testing for applicants who indicated they have an MMSC and an AWS certification, their license. They put that in their trade or vocational certificate checkbox. They're interested in welding, which was in the interest in which training program, and they do not have a criminal background record, which is in the barriers section. They also have a high school diploma or higher, which was in the highest level of education achieved. So what then happens is, before it goes to the team review, they identified the cream of the crop from that list to place in the random assignment. So somebody from the Central Region welding team would like to review the suitability test results for the applicants who passed welding candidate screening, passed the torque skills analysis, and passed the NOCD 21st Century Skills Assessment. So that might be a sample scenario of how you would set up your selection of suitability for that random assignment. So Mike, can you reiterate one more time about the practice of accepting veterans into the program?
Sure. Veterans get priority of service under WIA. That means if a veteran applicant is deemed suitable, that they automatically go into the treatment group. They bypass the random assignment piece. Now, in case anyone didn't pick up on it, let me say that another way. Just because they're a veteran doesn't mean they come in. I mean, they do have to have the other suitability factors in place to make it into the program. But once they are deemed suitable, they do not go into random assignment like everyone else. They go right into the treatment group. The problem with that is they are not counted in the evaluation. So if you get too heavy with veterans, you're going to have to make up more people coming into your program, and you're going to have to recruit more candidates to come in to counterbalance that effect. Otherwise, say, let's just take it to the ridiculous extreme. If 600 veterans were enrolled, we'd have a lot of people enrolled, but we would not be able to do any kind of evaluation because none of those people would be counted in the evaluation. So I cannot give you a magic number of how many veterans you can let in before that starts to impact the evaluation, because each region has a different target. But if you get more than a handful, then you've got to start thinking about pulling more people in to counterbalance that. So I'm thinking, more than 5 or 10, then that's a pretty good rule of thumb. If you get more than 5 or 10 in your program, you have an issue that you need to deal with. So that's why we do not recommend marketing this program to veterans. Do not try to go out of your way to entice veterans to apply for this, because you're only creating a problem for yourself later. But if they come in and they meet the criteria, by all means, you may let them in.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that for us. Also, just to let you know that we have a background check URL called familywatchdog.us that Natasha posted in the chat pod, and it is a background check that we recommended for the Summer Youth Employment Program. So that is something that you may want to investigate for background checks for the individuals that are applying for the ATIM program. And just to let y'all know, we had a question from the audience. What is a king stud? A king stud stands next to the cripple on the outside edge of a window casing or a door opening where the door or window will be placed later. So the king stud goes from the floor to the ceiling, stands next to the cripple, and helps hold up the header. So that was much more about carpentry than you all needed to know, but I thought I'd answer the question for you. So all in all, we want to use a team approach to make sure that we're putting the stamp of approval on that person that's going to go into random assignment. But who's on the team? So Mike, let's take a look at who actually is on the team and how they're going to determine suitability.
Okay. Yeah, real quickly. Obviously, you need WIA staff to determine WIA eligibility. As Dee spoke to earlier, we don't want other people doing that. That's where we get into trouble. So folks that know and understand WIA eligibility best are the folks that need to be handling that. I think everyone's on board with that across the state. You also need some staff to administer the NOCTI and TABE, or whatever the ESL equivalent that you're using in your area. And then also adult ed and manufacturing, especially manufacturing bridge experts. Because if they score low on TABE, then you've got to figure out, are they within striking distance of 9th and 10th grade math and reading? And if they are, well, how are you going to get them there? And that's what we need the adult ed folks to tell us is, are we within striking distance? Then also you need the subject matter experts in manufacturing. And this could be employers, could be industry groups, training providers, or someone in the INAM or IMEC network. INAM and IMEC, if you're not familiar with those, is Illinois Network for Advanced Manufacturing and Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Centers. And the reason this last group is in here, this is a key part of the whole model, is that employers have come to us with the complaint that, well, the candidates they get out of the workforce system or the education system just aren't what they need. So the whole idea behind this and building employer engagement throughout is that hopefully we can tailor our training to be a better match for the skills that they need on the time frame that they need. So what we're essentially doing is, for lack of a better term, calling their bluff and just saying, okay, well, we have given you the opportunity to help us actually screen applicants for suitability in manufacturing. So if we have subject matter experts that can review an applicant and their information and say, yeah, this person has what it takes to succeed in manufacturing, at the end of the day, when people leave our training, they should be better suited for manufacturing than individuals that didn't have that sort of screening. So this is a very key element, that you have somebody that understands manufacturing and not a WIA case manager who's going off a document that they may be seeing for the first or second time, or someone that may be touching it, like maybe doing NOCTI or work keys testing, that may have a general knowledge about it. We want somebody that actually is either teaching it or working at it to be able to say, yeah, this person who has applied for this program, either by the experience they already have is a good fit, or the experience they already have has skills that are transferable in. So that is the key piece for having those subject matter experts as part of this team.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. So we get into the application process now. So what we need to determine is, when the suitable applicants are determined, they are eligible, yes. They are suitable, yes. And then you complete the information on Illinois WorkNet so that it goes into the application process. And from that application, it also then goes into IWDS back and forth. And so what we want to show you is that, sorry, the image is a little small, but the screens will have a place where you can select, yes, they are suitable, yes, they are eligible, and that the team is making that random group assignment. And here's a little bit more larger screen here, that we have the drop-down menu that will show the career cluster interest inventory, CNC screening questions, all of the different screening questions opportunities. And then if you select other, you can also enter the assessment title, whether they passed, failed, or not graded, and the date that they did this. Now, one of the things that came up in our technical assistance questions yesterday was that the programmers are working on updating the column that said the ATIM intake location will equal the local workforce area that's associated with that. And then you will be able to run reports by an LWIA. And we hope to have that open and available as soon as possible. So that's, if you have any questions, and Natasha just put it in the chat pod, if you have any questions about accessing the ATIM tools, please send a request to info@illinoisworknet.com. And last but not least, for our webinar today, we have referrals. And the referrals boil down to that if you have determined that a applicant is ineligible or unsuitable for ATIM, you can refer them to the regular WIA program. You can refer them to a community college program, and you can refer them to some basic skills because we want, if they need more basic skills than would be allowed time-wise, that's when you would refer them off. And then you can refer them for additional community services. Now, the question arose about being able to apply for regular WIA. And what we want to tell you here is that if a customer is determined not quite right for ATIM, they do not have to completely refill out the WIA application because they would then be entered into IWDS as a pending application. But just because they are already in the system does not put them ahead of others in the queue for WIA services. If a program has a waiting list, they go to the back of the line just as if they had walked in off the street. This is a key for the evaluation of this. Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
No, just that the evaluators are very cognizant of making sure that people do not get fast-tracked into other services that they would not have received had they just walked in off the street. So just remember, it's okay to refer people out, but just make sure that they don't go to the front of the line or in any way receive special treatment based on their affiliation with the ATIM program.
Great. So we have a few upcoming webinars. Just to let you know that we will be talking on Tuesday about managing employer partnerships. On Wednesday, we will be talking about career plans. On Thursday, we will be talking about creating a personalized training plan. And then the following week, we have a technical assistance, another webinar, and then our last webinar for the series. We will continue to do technical assistance sessions following the conclusion of our formal webinar series, and then we will be doing updates and announcements about those updates on a webinar as they are happening. One of the things that we have coming up that we will be notifying you as soon as it is available very shortly is in the ATIM tools where you have to log in. Only the authenticated users would be able to access this area with a username and password. There will be documents added soon that we don't want on the public website, and they include the screening questions and the SPR guide, so the study guide. So those items will be added very shortly, and we will send you an email notification about those. If you have not had the chance to register for any of the ATIM webinars, please do so on Eventbrite, and just make sure that you do put them in your calendar separately. We have had 70 applications submitted so far, and we have 20 in process right now. So let's see if we missed any questions from the audience before we conclude our webinar for the day. I think we have one that just came in the chat pod that says, what happens if someone starts the process for ATIM and decides they don't want to participate? Can they still get WIA training services? Mike, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. Yes, they can. I mean, depends on when they drop out. Have they signed the agreement or not, and does the agreement that you had them sign say that they could be denied WIA services, if they drop out after signing that? So it kind of depends on what point they bail out on you. But at the end of the day, I don't know that we could deny someone WIA services if they're otherwise eligible for it.
Great, great. All right, so if you all want to take a moment to complete the last few polling questions for us. If you have any other questions, please type them into the chat pod. We will be adding all of your questions and the answers to the FAQ on the ATIM guide page. If you have not had the opportunity to join us in our LinkedIn group or follow us on Twitter or Facebook, we invite you to do that. And Chelsea, if you would be so kind as to add the LinkedIn group website address into the chat pod, I would appreciate it. How do we access the list of who has applied? When I went in, I see list of 7 with 2 pending. When you go to the ATIM guide, and Natasha, do you want to pull up your screen share so that we can show them real quickly. I'll pull it over into the screen.
Which region is Donna from? Or Donna from?
Sorry, I'll make this a little bit smaller here. Donna, can you type in the chat pod what region you're from? So basically what happens is if you go to the ATIM guide, which is on ilworknetmanufacturing.com/ATIM. Oh, then if you click on sign in to ATIM tools right below the crane looking item, Natasha was hovering over it, then you get an area here where it shows the names and the regions. And since since Natasha has state access, she sees everybody. But in the area where you are, you will see only the applicants from your area. And the flag will appear. It's not ready quite yet. Very shortly, and we will alert you by email when those are ready. Then we can, the flag will be on either end of the person's name. All right. If you still need to find out something, that we did not address in our suitability webinar today, if you could type your questions into the chat pod, we would appreciate it. If there is something that we didn't cover that you were expecting, please let us know so that we can answer your questions for you. Okay, I don't see anybody typing right now, so I would like to thank Jim Potts for joining us, LaVon Nelson for joining us today, and Mike Baker for helping us make sure that all of this information is clear to everyone. If you have anybody any other questions, please make sure that you send them to info@illinoisworknet.com. If you need to update any of your location information, or if you need to add anyone to the workforce partners, then what we need to do is send that information also to info@illinoisworknet.com. All right. Thank you, Jim and Mike and LaVon. And as always, I love to thank Chelsea and Lacey and Natasha for their help. And we did have 2 people tell us that this webinar was not helpful. If you could please send us a message at our email address, I would appreciate finding out what we could help you with further. Thank you very much for your time today. We hope you have a great afternoon. We'll see you on the 10th at our next webinar.